Welcome to Belonging Reimagined. I'm your host, Dr. Mona. As a mental health therapist, professor, and researcher, I guide folks in owning their belonging journey and exploring barriers to belonging. In this podcast, I explore real stories with phenomenal guests about how to experience both interconnection and interdependence. And my hope for you is that you learn ways to experience more connection in the world around you and the world within yourself. We don't have to do this life thing alone. You're right where you belong. We have the one and only Van Eure in the house today, and I am thrilled and honored to have you here, Van, as the owner of the Angus Barn, which is a beloved restaurant here in the Triangle area. People come from all over the country, and I think even from all over the world, to come and visit this beautiful restaurant that you and your family have created for the community. And to have you as a friend, I could not be more honored. And to have you here today, I thank you so much.
Well, I can't thank you enough for asking me to be on your show. I didn't not even know about your show, but I was like, oh my gosh, I love this woman and I love everything she does. So I'm grateful that you asked me. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Really, I mean it, Van. I have vivid memories of being a little girl and going to the Angus Barn. And, the service is what I remember the most. And all the little ways that you and your family have intentionally created a space to really make people feel special, regardless of the occasion. I mean, when we would have a special occasion, that's where we would go, is the Angus Barn. And it was like that until now, even, with my parents and my family, that's just the place to go. And one of the things that always struck me, especially now as an adult, and especially now for me being in a leadership position as an entrepreneur, is watching the way that you lead. And I am fascinated by your story, and I'd love for you to share more about it. And so with the Angus Barn being so special for so many people here in the area for so long, for decades now, what is the history and the story behind the restaurant?
Well, it's kind of a crazy story because my father had never done anything in the world to do with cooking or food or restaurants. He was supposed to be a pro football player, and then he got drafted in the draft, in the military draft. And then he ended up with 3 kids. And then he served in Germany for 4 years and came back, and he had like, what am I going to do? And he ran into an old college buddy. And then they said, well, we think Raleigh needs a steakhouse. And they went home and told their wives they were going to build a steakhouse. And my mom literally cried for 3 days because she said, you are an idiot. We are going to be like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? And so then the next step was find the land. Well, they bought this piece of land that was out in the middle of nowhere. At that time, Raleigh-Durham Airport was not there. It was a landing strip for single-engine planes. The Raleigh-Durham Highway was a tiny 2-lane country road. It was like a country road, 2 lanes. So they found this land, and no bank would loan them the money they said that a restaurant that far out in the country would never work. Never. What are you thinking? So my grandfather, my father's father, had to go to the bank and say, look, I'll put my house up for collateral. I believe in these guys. So they bought the land like for nothing, never knowing that the RTP was going to be there, 540, 40, it was going to become a highway, and it was going to connect Raleigh and Durham. So of course, the first few years were huge struggles, but the lessons that he learned in those years and that I learned from watching him was no matter what goes wrong, if you always just take such good care of your people that are with you, helping you run the restaurant, then they're going to in turn take care of the guest. And as long as you just keep the main thing, which is, making every guest feel like the most important person in the world, then you're going to be okay. Because even if you mess up, you just say, "Hey, we messed up. Well, here's what we're going to do to make it right." And so from those lessons that I sort of just watched as a little girl, watching him, how he struggled through not knowing how to do any of this and just focusing on just taking care of people. And his staff adored him. And so they would never leave him, so it's kind of unusual in the restaurant industry to have people that stayed with you for so long. So therefore, he started an insurance program way ahead of his time, for a profit sharing program way ahead of his time, and started doing all these things just to take care of people, because he realized, my gosh, this is where they're raising their families. And this is not just a fly by night job for them. So of course I worked there since I was, like 7 and, you're going to work. And so I worked there, and I really never had, intention of actually running the restaurant. Fate sort of happened to me, but it was all meant to be. Everything that happened, I can see now, it all happened for a reason. But that was really the beginnings of the restaurant. And there's one really funny story. So the dishwashers had been telling him for the longest time, "Mr. Eure, we need a dishwasher machine that's decent. We just don't have it. This is not good enough. This is not working for this crowd of people." And so he kept saying, "You guys can do it. You can do it. You can hang in there." And then one night he here's how he described it. He said, he had this real Southern drawl. He said, "Have you ever seen what lava looks like coming off of a mountain? Well, that's what the dishes look like coming out of the machine, because the dishwashers have walked off the job." and and he said, and I don't blame them. He said, "So my first big lesson was always listen to your employees." So because they actually know the answer. And he said, "My wife and I, and my partner's wife, and my partner, we did dishes all night long. And when the sun came up, the light bulb came on in our head, and we said, you know what? These dishwashers, we needed to listen to them." So and from that point on, like, I learn everything that I do from listening to my team and what they tell me they need, because they're the ones that have the direct contact with the customers.
They know.
So the secret to the business is not really anything except care. Just care what your guests want, care what your employees want, and just care. That's that. And it's so simple that it's hard.
It's really hard for a lot of people to get that. I mean, in the restaurant industry, what is the turnover rate? 70 to 80% generally?
Huge.
And what is it at Angus Barn?
It's 14%.
14%. And the thing is that I believe you because I know you. And also, we are regulars there, right? We go up and we sit in that top part. There's a special part up there called the Turkey Lounge, and we go and hang out there. It's all cush, and it's kind of a hangout, upscale hangout, we'll say. But also, you've managed to create upscale and down home place at the same time. It's really, really great. And we see the same people there from 15 years ago. I mean, who are like career employees in the restaurant industry. This is what they do, but I don't know that they would do that anywhere else. But with you, Van, and that's not the Angus Barn, it's you. And I know that it is because I see the way that they adore you. I can see the humility that you have and the sincerity of their interactions with you. It's not just putting on a show for the employees. And my partner used to work there as the cellar master. And so I know that they kind of feel like they can let things down in front of him and in front of me. They've seen me around for a while. And it's still the same way. It's still the same way as it was before they knew who I was. So I know that it's genuine and sincere the way that they feel about you. And I see the care that you show them. But it's interesting because so many leaders miss that point in terms of allowing people to be people. And there's a certain reverence that I can see that the folks at the Angus Barn, not just the customers and the patrons there, but the employees as well. There's a certain reverence that they hold for you. And at the same time, the dynamic doesn't feel so hierarchical where you're the boss. It
Right,
feels
right.
like they are the ones that are really taking charge. They are the ones that have a certain amount of comfort I can see and safety that you have really cultivated for them. And you're the one running around saying, hey, what do you need? Hey, what do you need? Hey, what do you need? What can I get for you?
Well, what we believe in is literally we took Kim Blanchard's theory. He's one of my mentors, and we just turned the pyramid upside down. And so the pyramid, which would usually be the boss at the top, which is just completely upside down, where I'm at the bottom because my job is to serve the people that work for me and with me so that they can then serve the guest. So if I am what I am is I'm a provider of their needs. And if I don't provide them with what they need, they don't have the tools. Think about it. If you're a carpenter and you work for a company and they haven't given you the tools, you can't do your job. So I have to give them whatever tools it is, whether they need to, take wine classes, or whether they need new uniforms, or whether, just whatever they need. I need to be the provider of their needs. And that's what I consider my job to be, is to make sure that all of these people from the managers up have everything that they need in order to make the thousands of guests that come in happy. But the other thing that I think is key that a lot of leaders of companies miss is if you trust your employees to make decisions, like they can make a decision, like they can comp a meal. I mean, because they can decide, I'm not charging you for your meal, ma'am, because things weren't right. And all they have to do is let us know, of course, for inventory purposes. And it's nice to get a manager to go by the table if that happens. But think about it. That person has been spending, like 45 minutes with this table. I haven't. They know what's going on. They know the disappointment level if things haven't gone right. If they feel that they need to take care of the meal, or let's send them home with a gift basket, or give them a gift card, then I need to trust that. And 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 so I have given them that power.
Mhm.
And do you know that in in all the years that I've been doing this, never one time has one employee abused that power. They have never given away meals to their friends, or they take it so seriously. People do rise to the level that give them to rise to. And there, of course they're bad apples. Bad apples roll in. But the thing about a great culture is, when you have a great culture, a bad apple kind of shows up really quickly. And then you realize, this is toxic, this person isn't working out. Of course, that's a whole nother lesson I had to learn, because I thought that I was like a savior and I could save people. And I realized I can't. So, I can try to be an example to you, and I can try to help you, but I can't save you. But it's the empowering your team, and then they really feel like their section is their own little restaurant, and they can make their decisions. So that's really hard for most leaders to do. It is so hard for them to give up that control. But once you do, you will watch your people rise. It's really amazing.
What do you think, Van, is the barrier in terms of trusting the team? What do you think I mean, you're not that person, so you might not know, but I'm curious, being in the industry, what you might have seen from your colleagues.
So we go over the application, then we check all past jobs. We don't check references, because of course all your references are going to be people that love you, but
Yeah.
we check all past jobs. And you go through 3 interviews, one on the phone and 2 in person with 2 different people. We also let one of the team members that they're going to be working with interview them. So it's not just you're interviewed by a manager and then you're interviewed by someone you're going to be working with. And we have a lot of questions that aren't just like regular interview questions, but so our rule of thumb is on the fence means no. Because if you get a funny feeling in your stomach about something, like your mom always taught you, if you get a funny feeling, you shouldn't be in that place. Or if you get a funny feeling about a guy, then you shouldn't be in the relationship. But on the fence means no. And so we just try to hire. We don't really care. Do you know how to bartend? I don't care. Do you know how to cook? I don't care. Do you know how to be a cashier? I don't care. We can teach you that. We can't teach you how to come with this ability to have a servant's heart. What we're looking for is a servant's heart, somebody that loves to serve and loves to make people's day and loves to make people's experience great, loves to make a memory, because we're not selling meals. We're selling memories.
Oh, it's so
I mean,
true.
and memories are things that people can't buy. Memories are you don't have but one chance to have your grandmother's 80th birthday. And you don't get but one chance to do your rehearsal dinner. You get one chance to celebrate, maybe the last meal your father's going to have before he goes into the hospital for surgery. You get one chance, and those are memories. So, and because they're choosing the Angus Barn to have this memory, what an honor for us, for them to want to do that. So once you get everybody on your team, once you hire people that have the servant's heart, and then you train them you train them, you teach them, you train them, and then you reward them constantly, then they become mentors, and then they become coaches, and then it just carries on from there. So it's really the secret to me is how you hire, because you have to be so careful about it, because if you get a toxic person in and you don't know it, but they're just creating this really bad vibe, and bad news spreads faster than good news, and then it just kind of ruins the whole feel. And no matter how much you love that person, listen, I had to let somebody go that I loved. I mean, I loved her. She was like a friend, but she was not good for the team. There were things that were being said and done that were very harmful to the team, and my job was to protect the team.
Yeah.
So as hard as that was for me, I had to let her go, and that hurt. But I knew in my heart I was doing the right thing.
Well, one of the things that you're saying is that really stands out is that your job is to protect the team.
Yes.
Not the bottom line.
No. The
not
bottom
even
line
necessarily the customers, but the team, because the team takes care of the customers, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
and that creates a sense of community and safety within the team. And in order to have belonging, we have to have safety. And oftentimes, in order to feel safe, we have to have belonging. I think there's a symbiosis kind of there.
They have to know that I have their back.
Yes.
I have their back.
Yes, absolutely. And it goes back to that structure that you're talking about, the upside down pyramid. In that hiring, the other thing that I'm hearing too is that they're meeting with multiple people. And when they're meeting with a peer, someone who's going to be on their team, that especially can create what I call interpersonal belonging, that one-on-one connection that they're making with someone, so that they have a sense of connection right off the bat when they come into the Angus Barn to work there as an employee. We do something similar in our practice. I actually meet with about 5 or 6 different people. And because the team of clinicians is so large and they're all working together and they're all mentoring one another, just very similarly to what you said. but no one really taught me how to do that. That's something that I figured out in leadership positions along the way based on my previous experiences and what didn't feel good to me as an
Right.
employee. For you,
Same.
I know
Yeah.
that you got your degree in education and
Hmm.
then lived in Kenya after college for a few
Hmm.
years. And
Yes.
you established there a Montessori style kind of school. And
Yes.
so I'm curious how that experience taught you or what that experience taught you about leadership and community and anything else.
Well, first of all, I was in the minority in Kenya. I was the only white person for miles around. So that was a wonderful thing for me to see what that felt like to be in the minority. And then, I loved understanding that feeling. I thought that was wonderful. And then the other thing is, you know, I didn't have, I mean, I lived very, very, very simply. It was like a hut and with an outhouse. And you, there weren't like stores like where you could just drive here to the store. I mean, you had to figure things out. So it taught me sort of how to I think I would be a good person to be put on an island with, to like, okay, make it. You make it here, because I'm gonna figure it out. Their main language was Swahili, which they spoke a little English, but and so I'm having to, just indulge myself into their culture, understand their culture. So I think that taught me just how to totally absorb myself into something that was completely opposite from myself. And so it gave, and when all my friends, we went over on a mountain climb I was with 11 people on this. We climbed Mount Kenya and Mount Kilimanjaro. It was meant to be a mountain climb program. And when we all went to the airport, I said, guys, guess what? I said, I'm not getting on the plane. And they looked at me and they said, what? What are you doing? I said, they need teachers in this country. I'm a teacher. I'm going to stay. So then the next step was there was no phones that worked then. So I sent a telegram to my parents. Love it here, not coming home, looking for a job. But from that experience, I just kind of realized, well, I can really do whatever I need to do in life. There's a way. There is a way. I can make it. If I can make it in a third world country, not speaking the language, being in the minority. But the good thing that I had going for me is teachers in third world countries are so respected because they need teachers so badly.
Mhm.
And so it was a position that was needed. And I felt a real, almost, well, I really felt like if there's past lives, I was there before.
Mm,
I really almost connected with the people there on a level that's beyond anything I've ever felt.
mm,
It was amazing.
mm.
And I was there for 5 years.
Wow. And you started a school there.
Yes. In my area, I was teaching in another school, in a high school, and then and I had bought this little motor scooter that I would drive 45 minutes to the school. But then in my area where I lived, there were so many children that didn't have a school to go to. And all of the parents started asking me if I would tutor their children, privately, like on the side, to teach them to read and write. And so I said, okay, well, I had enough of those students around me. I'm just going to start my own little little school, and teach teach the children in my area that didn't have a school to go to. So, and I'm still in touch with like 12 of my students all the time. That they were 12 that were with me for like the whole 5 years. And now they have children of their own, and so, but we're still in touch. But I would have never left Kenya. I would have been there forever. It was sort of a kind of a fluky thing. I got engaged to an Australian guy, and that didn't work out. He lived there. It didn't work out. We were on our way to get married in Raleigh, and then go to Australia, and then everything fell apart. And then here I was in Raleigh, and so that's how that happened. But
Yeah.
and then I'm like, I left the country I love for a you know guy, you know. But it was really a blessing because I I only had 3 years with my dad. I didn't know it, but 3 years later he died, and we had never had a great. We had butted heads all our lives because he's real strong personality. I'm real strong personality, and he I was the rebel from hell. I was the child that you would tell your children, you can play with anybody but not Van.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, no one, okay, not like not bad where like no one died, but
Right.
I was like very rebellious and defiant and daredevilish. And I was like, today we're gonna jump off Last Monroe Bridge, like I would be. So I was like the bad child. And so my father and I, we butted heads all our lives. And then when I came back from Kenya, I had 3 years with him where I was like, oh my goodness, he is such a nice man. And he was thinking, well, she's a good person.
Oh,
So
wow.
if I hadn't had those years, I I would really think I'd be lost right now. But I had those 3 wonderful, incredible years with him where I worked with him side by side in the restaurant and got to watch him lead and learn so much from him. But I wouldn't
Mm,
give anything. I would not give $1 million for my time in Africa.
well, and the Kenya back then, decades ago, is not the same Kenya that it is today. Which, of course, in
No.
many parts of most parts of Kenya, or many parts of Kenya, I should say, are thriving and doing
Oh
doing very
yes.
well, and it's a very different lifestyle than it was then.
Yes.
And I also want to note that that rebellious spirit, I was the same way, by the way. I was the one that would get into dangerous kind of situation, like you said, jumping off
Yeah.
bridges, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Mm.
thank goodness that we're here today. We were kind of the wild children, right? And
Right.
also, I am realizing as we're talking now, Van, that we still have those rebellious spirits. I think that is what led to saying, no, I'm going to do things differently than the way other
Right.
people do.
Right.
And we can take that energy and as we grow older and say, wait a second, I don't have to assimilate to the way this cookie cutter society does things in terms of
Right.
leadership, right? That really doesn't feel good, that
Right.
doesn't, even if we're looking at bottom line, right? Doesn't even work in terms of that when we're talking about turnover rates, right?
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing to be able to take that energy and transform it into something that
Yes.
that interestingly our parents can become quite proud of. you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's funny.
Absolutely. I mean, you are so right because I so many times people say, "Well, you should do it this way," and I'm like, "Well, why? Why? What?" And I love the saying that somebody said one time that worrying about the bottom line is like looking at the scoreboard instead of in the basket when you're shooting a basketball. I mean, so like, why do you care what the scoreboard says? You need to be looking at the basketball, at the goal. And so I don't care what the scoreboard says because the scoreboard's going to take care of itself as long as I'm doing all of the other things that I need to be doing, which all about the people, especially in the restaurant industry, because there's no a computer can't serve your food. A computer can't cook your food. This is a people industry,
AI is not going to
you know.
take over that. That's for sure. Yeah.
No.
It's not going to take over that. And thinking about the people, COVID-19 during the lockdown was
Mm.
obviously without saying one of the most difficult periods in time for the restaurant industry. A lot of restaurants
Right.
just didn't make it. They couldn't survive that
Right.
time. You led the restaurant and the Angus Barn. You led the Angus Barn and your team through the pandemic. You took care of your employees. They still had their health insurance during the shutdown and afterwards when, the restaurant's operating at like half capacity, right? Well, just paint a picture for us, Fan, of what that time looked like, how you overcome those kind of struggles and those during the very key time in our lifetimes, really.
So when that happened, and I had to sit there and say, okay, what's the first thing? I really reached back in my memory to when the Angus Barn burnt to the ground, and in 1964, 4 years after it opened. I remember the very first thing my father did was he sat down and he called every single employee and he said, "Don't worry, you. I will either get you a job at another restaurant or you can work on the construction crew and you can help us build it back. You will be taken care of." So from that, I said, okay, there's my lesson. There's my lesson. So I got all the managers together and I said, here's the list. We have 400 employees. Each of us are going to call this many people and have a personal conversation with them and see what they need. What do you need? What are you worried about? If you want to come work on projects at the Angus Barn, we're going to do some projects. If you want to come work on takeout, or if you just need to stay home right now, use this time to stay home. But the first thing was to get in touch with every employee. Then the next thing was if we could tell that somebody was suffering, okay, then we're going to keep calling them every so many days to check on them. I had several employees to my house. We went on walks in the woods. We went, on trail walks. We, sometimes just sat and talked. I was worried about, the mental health of some of the people. And so I just wanted my main thing was like, we each have our group of people that we are in charge of checking in on and taking care of. And there were some that were in really bad shape that never experienced anything like this in their life. And then we set up a to go, which we'd never done before. And it was really funny watching us try to figure that out and get that off the ground and bumping into each other, running the to go orders out to the cars and getting all the cars mixed up and trying to figure out, they said they were in this, it's a blue, whatever. What do you mean you said it was a blue car? It's, and we had to figure all that out because we've never done like to go where they came and picked up before. But then we did get so many projects done that needed to be done. We cleaned every single thing. The turkey lounge where your favorite place is. We took every one of those turkeys down and scrubbed each one. And no, we didn't make any money during that time. But we set up a fund through the North Carolina Restaurant Association that any employee could write a letter to, and all we had to verify was that you did work at this restaurant, and you could get an immediate $500. So, like if you had an immediate needs for groceries or a light bill or whatever, so we didn't have to ask any questions. And Steve, my husband, he was president of the North Carolina Restaurant Association at that time, he set it up, and we got funding from all of our vendors, all of our food suppliers, all of our wine suppliers. We got so much money that just came in, and we were writing checks for $500 and sending them to people all over North Carolina that were in the restaurant business that needed to pay, that needed $500 urgently right then.
Wow.
So, and that went on the entire time.
Fan, I have goosebumps from the moment you started talking about this. Even through the parts of the running into each other and the takeouts and the mishaps.
That was awful. We were on our headsets, and finally I got so frustrated because they're trying to, like, the same person that called the order in wasn't the person that came and picked it up, and I'm like, no, this is not Susan Clark, And then finally I said, I'm taking my headset out and I'm doing this by just voice and face. and I took my headset out. I was like being rebellious against the kitchen crew trying to tell me where to take the orders because I was one of the runners. And I took my headset out, and then we had one. It was one of the special days. One of them was Mother's Day, and we had cars all the way down to the gas station on 70, and they were because we had so many orders, and we were like, whoa, we were struggling to get them out. And I was running all the way down past the driveway to the cars in line, going, "Don't worry, we'll be right with you."
Yeah, and for people listening who aren't familiar, that is a long way down from the restaurant to the gas station. It's not
Well, the good thing
not a
was
little
is that
short
by the
walk.
time I would run down there and tell them not to worry, we were going to get their food, and that they may not have to pay for it if they had to wait too much longer. But by the time I made it, I was so dripping with sweat, and I looked so frazzled that they felt so sorry for me. They're like, "No, you don't worry. You don't worry, honey. Everything's fine. Can we help you? Can we get out of the car and help you?"
But that's what cultivating relationships looks like, and seeing people's humanity and being the person that's the owner and is willing to be the runner, the person that's willing
Yeah.
to be dripping sweat and not
Yeah.
standing there like a beautiful statue all the time, like some statuesque model, and you're willing to get in the trenches, and that says so much about your leadership style. Really, it's like you're not going to ask anyone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. And as
Oh,
cliche as
yeah.
that sounds, so many leaders don't follow that. They really, really don't, you
Well, you
know?
have to. The thing is, and what I'm making my children do, and what my father had me do, well, is you have to work in every single department of the restaurant. Every single you. I mean, you cannot miss one department. So you have to work in custodial. You have to work in dish. You have to work at. Well, when I was in custodial, okay, cleaning restrooms and then doing all that. I was out in the parking lot with Myrtle, who was working with me, and we were picking up cigarette butts on the ground because this was back when people were smoking. This was like years and years. I mean, And Betty Sugar, who ran the kitchen, who Mark will remember, she came out and she goes, "Myrtle, why is Van picking up cigarette butts and you're not?" And Myrtle says, "Betty, Van's doing fine. Van's doing just fine." And Betty fired Myrtle right then. And then I was the only one cleaning bathrooms for 6 weeks because they couldn't find another person yet to do that. So I cleaned bathrooms for 6 weeks, and I'm cleaning urine from around the urinals, that, and you know what? I'm thinking, you know what? I'm learning a lot. And one thing I'm learning is that men can't aim.
I was thinking,
So I thought, well, in every department, I'm learning something. And
right.
and by God, when I have kids, they're gonna know how to aim.
I'm not having this in my household. Oh, that's so funny. But it's
But
true, in terms of being able to go through. And I know that every person that works there goes through all of the different areas, like what you're saying.
right,
And that in
right.
itself creates certain connection and community and respect. Because if
It
we
does,
don't
because
have
when you're working with the dishwashers
yeah,
for that night, you see, oh my gosh, look what they go through. And now, okay, but then the other thing that we do is every person has to help the dish department for 10 to 15 minutes every night before they leave. That means the dishwashers get out at 11:30 instead of 1:30. So they've had that many people give them 15 minutes, and so everybody, that's just part of their job. And everybody has to have their time doing recycling, and everybody has to have their time. We don't ever let anybody start to feel like I'm so much better that I don't have to do that anymore, because no one's so much better than to have to do anything. I clean up throw up and all the time. I mean, if The rule is if someone gets sick and you're the work person there, you're the one that handles it. You don't walk away.
Right, right.
So it's just, in a restaurant, it's not, people, people would really laugh, but you're dealing with 1,000 customers a night, usually, and the Angus Barn average 1,000 a night. So anything's going to happen. You're going to have a screaming baby. You're going to have someone get sick. You're going to have a fight. You're going to have a marital argument. You're going to have, you're going to have, you're going to, you're going to, you're going to have somebody. One time I had a man that proposed and she said no.
Oh, no.
And then she got up and left. And so I sat with him the rest of the night and I held his hand. I reached out and I held his hand. I said, sir, listen, she was not the right one. She was not the right, because the servers came running to get me and said, this man just got down on his knees and proposed. And she said no and walked off and he's sitting there. And I just went and sat with him.
Because what you're teaching, Van, is humanity and empathy, really seeing each
Yes.
other's humanity and seeing and developing empathy for one another. And when you get close up to someone's life, it's hard. Brene Brown says it's hard to not love someone when you're up close, when you
Right.
see them up close.
And when you really listen, to them,
Yeah. And so
you know,
what you're doing is you're teaching them, or you're creating a space and a process really for other people to be doing the same thing, where they are
Right.
working in each other's spaces in a way that creates that connection. And then
Right.
we're not working in isolation, right? In terms of,
Right.
we know that when we do this certain thing, or when we send those dishes off, we know what it looks like on the other side when someone
Right.
is taking that.
Right.
It's not out of sight, out of mind. We remember, right? Because we have that kind of, those kind of experiences that you're creating. And also, as you're
Right.
talking about just, the mental health of the employees during the lockdown, even of some of the customers that come in, tell us more about the foundation that you developed and the annual event that happens that has become a huge part of our culture in this area.
My brother, when he was like 16, all of a sudden things started happening to him. We did not know what was going on. Ends up years later, we find out that he is schizophrenic, chronic bipolar, he obsessive compulsive, just a delusional. Like something snapped in his brain, and then everything went awry. Well, my parents went to every hospital possible in the United States to try to get help. And everywhere they went, it was, we know nothing about mental illness. No, this was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
We know nothing about what's going on in his brain, nothing. So my father finally, after really, first of all, not admitting that his son was sick, not letting us talk about it, not letting my mother discuss it with her friends, like it was a horrible, just a horrible thing. And then all of a sudden watching him succumb to this and say, my son is sick, and I may not be able to make him well, but I have to do something. So he started the Foundation of Hope, where he funded research, for, doctors that were doing research into, all kinds of cures for mental illness. So then it was just a small little foundation for years. And then when my father passed away in 1988, all of the employees of the Angus Barn said, we have to do something to honor him. And we want to do a walk for his foundation that he believed in so much and loved so much. And so they started the Walk for Hope. And we never knew there'd be more than one, but it was everyone. Well, the first one, we went from his first restaurant, the Angus Barn, to his last restaurant, 42nd Street Oyster Bar, 12.2 miles up Glenwood Avenue the whole way. And without realizing how we're going to get back to the restaurant, like, duh. Anyway, we were our feet, everyone's feet were blistered. But it was like only 125 people. We just raised a small amount of money. It was an adorable event put on by the employees. But then the next year they went to do it again, and the next year again, and we, figured out, well, you got to start and end at the same place. So you start and end at the Angus Barn, and now it has become a walk, a run, and a festival. So now we have something for everybody. So if you don't want to do the walk, you can just come and be part of the festival. We have a band, we have food, we have, all kinds of activities going on. And it's a really, I mean, it's a fun day. And all of the money, 100% of the money raised goes directly to fund research and treatment facilities in the Triangle. But the research is research that benefits worldwide. One of the researchers that we funded, she the drug. This rarely happens in research, but the drug that she started working on about 7 years ago just got approved by the FDA for postpartum, and we funded her. And because we gave a little bit of, we gave like $75,000, she was able to then apply to the National Institute of Mental Health and get a huge grant.
Oh,
And
wow.
so this was huge. And, what we do is not like build a building. I mean, so you can't really usually see the results of what we do because we're dealing with things that we may not see. They may just discover something in 20 years, but you have to trust that, our team are choosing the right research projects to fund and we are doing the right things with the money. And, we're an open book as far as, what all that is. My sister actually runs the whole organization.
Wow.
And so it's very personal, family run, organization. But I am so proud of the amount of research projects that we have funded in community treatment centers that we've also funded, and just helping in an area that is a lot of times shoved under the carpet and not talked
Yeah.
about. And mental illness is used to be like what's wrong with you? And,
Really hush hush.
yes. But
Yeah.
now, one of our other main goals with the whole thing, the whole foundation, is to reduce the stigma.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that is a really huge part of our lives right now.
And
Because
you are doing that because how many thousands of people come to this
what's
event?
up to 4,000. This last year was 4,000
That's
people.
huge. That's huge. And we have
Yeah.
major airlines that are sponsoring the event. I see
Yes.
big news outlets that are sponsoring the event, all kinds of
Yeah.
folks. And again, Van, that speaks to the way that you cultivate relationships and what you stand for in terms of your values. Going back to what your dad said, make the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
And that's, that's what I see you doing in terms of really aligning with your values of connecting with people from a real empathic, empathetic,
Mhm.
humanity kind of lens and seeing
Right.
all of us, regardless of our roles, seeing people as
Right.
people, making the main thing the main thing. Really
Well,
is.
seeing my brother go through this, watching this happen to him, and knowing what his life has been like, I almost feel like I can recognize someone that needs help like immediately. And I mean, I will pull them into my office and say, "What's going on?" They'll say nothing. No, no, no. What is going on? And do you need help? Which is where you come in, because then I can refer them to you.
And I know that you have these conversations because you'll call up and say, do you have room for I'm like, we always do. We always.
Yes. And I mean, so just knowing that your team of clinicians is out there, it is like a gift sent down from heaven to me to be able to know that I have that resource to provide to my employees. It is a incredible thing. I mean, I'm not, okay, whoever's listening to this, she did not tell me to say this. I'm just saying it because I've seen it in action. I've seen, I could get emotional when I say this, but I've seen one of my employees get better because of her services, and he needed help so badly, and I've watched him, and he has come to me and thanked me. Yeah, he's just, Van, thank you. And so, I don't know. I'm not able to discuss his treatment, but I know he's receiving it. And so I'm just saying this because I want to say it to you, that what you provide is amazing for people.
Thank you, Van. But it's you that's seeing people for who they are and being the bridge to connecting folks with what they need. And we thank you for that.
And I even call you 11 o'clock at night. I even call 11 o'clock at night and say, oh my God, is she up? I've got it.
And when I see your name on the cell phone, I answer. I'm like, Van needs something. I'm answering right now. We get it all.
But it's like my 11 o'clock is like everyone else's 5 o'clock.
I want to ask you, Van, my favorite question that I ask at the end of every episode is, what does belonging mean to you?
Belonging to me means that you believe in something greater than yourself, whether you're a Christian or whether it's Buddha or whether it's whatever it is, but you believe in a greater power than yourself that is in this world that connects and helps us all. Mm-hmm. And that because you believe in that power, you are able to use that strength to enhance your life in ways that can help other people improve their lives.
Yes, absolutely. And that power can be, however way it moves you. I always say, as cheesy as it might sound for folks, the power of love, whatever loving energy you have within yourself and wherever it comes from for you.
Right.
It is really a bridge to connection within ourselves.
Believing in something you cannot see.
Yeah.
You can't see it. But
it's that embrace.
But you believe in it.
Yeah. And you feel it and you experience it. Van, I love you so much. I thank you for being here with us today. Your words of wisdom. I really do hope that people who are already in leadership positions or people who are aspiring to be leaders and wondering how they're going to do it, hear it from the rebels. You can do it your own way. It really can.
That's
you
right.
You don't have to do a cookie cutter kind of way.
No.
Van and I have similar approaches, but our business structures look a little bit different, but they're similar and they have the same spirit. And we can do that. We get to do it our own ways. And so use that rebellious spirit to shift and turn and connect to that loving spirit that we all have somewhere within. Thank you, Van, for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. All of the show notes and links can be found on my website at drmonanour.com. That's drmonanour.com. Throughout most episodes, you'll hear me referring to the belonging model that I developed, which is represented by a belonging life map that helps you explore areas in your life where you feel more connection and areas where you might feel more isolation. And you can get a free copy of your own belonging life map on my website. Again, that's drmonanour.com. If you like the Belonging Reimagined podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review. That can help more folks find us and keep more episodes coming. Until next time, I'm Dr. Mona. You're right where you belong.